All right, today we're going to unpack a really dramatic story. It's about a country's economy, one that went from incredible wealth to just devastating crisis. We're talking about Venezuela.
And when I say dramatic, I mean it. You see, this is a story of two total extremes. For a huge chunk of the 20th century, Venezuela was the richest nation in all of Latin America. Now, fast forward to today, and it's the scene of one of the worst economic crises in modern history, a complete 180. So that's the big question we're tackling, right? How in the world does a country that is literally sitting on the largest proven oil reserves on the entire planet just completely fall apart economically? It's a puzzle. Okay, let's get into it.
To really get our heads around this, we're going to walk through the whole timeline, kind of hitting 5 key moments. We'll start with the discovery of oil, then move into its golden age, see what happened during a huge political revolution, and, well, end with the collapse. Okay, so first things first, we have to start with the one thing that defined modern Venezuela: oil. It's what turned it into what economists call a petrostate, and really, that's just a fancy way of saying a country whose entire economy pretty much lives or dies based on its oil exports.
And the moment it all started? 1922. Picture this, a massive oil well just blows out under Lake Maracaibo, and it spewed oil for 9 straight days. That one event was basically Venezuela telling the whole world, hey, we're sitting on an ocean of black gold.
And the change wasn't slow. It was immediate, and it was huge. The country went from this quiet farming society to a global energy giant almost overnight. Suddenly, oil money was just flooding in, and it completely reshaped everything.
And that flood of cash led to what we call its golden age. This was the absolute peak. We're talking about all this oil wealth paying for huge new highways, hospitals, universities. It supported a stable democracy, and get this, it gave Venezuelans the highest standard of living in the entire region. Times were good.
But, and this is a big but, all that prosperity was actually pretty fragile. You see, even during these amazing times, the seeds of the crisis we see today were already being planted. Let's see how. A really critical moment came in 1976. That's when the government decided to nationalize the entire oil industry. What that means is the state suddenly had almost total control over the country's main moneymaker. Think about it. All of Venezuela's eggs were now in one single government-run basket. And this is where we need to talk about a really key economic idea. It's called Dutch disease, and it perfectly explains the hidden danger here. It sounds a little weird, but it's what happens when a massive boom in one thing, like oil, actually ends up wrecking all the other parts of your economy.
So, here's how it goes down. All that oil money comes pouring in, which makes your national currency super strong. Now that sounds great, right? But the problem is, it makes everything else you produce, say coffee or cocoa, way too expensive for other countries to buy from you. So what happens? Those other industries, like farming and manufacturing, they just kind of wither away.
And what you're left with is an entire country whose fortune is tied to the crazy ups and downs of global oil prices. It's like being on a roller coaster. You know, when prices were high in the 70s, it was a party, but that boom and bust cycle meant the whole economy was living dangerously on the edge. And sure enough, in the 1980s, they found out just how sharp that edge was. There was an oil glut, prices crashed, and bam, Venezuela's income just tanked. The country was thrown into a massive debt crisis, people were on the streets, and that whole illusion of endless good times, it was shattered.
All that chaos and anger, it really set the stage for massive change, both politically and economically. And that brings us to our next chapter, the Bolivian Revolution.
So, in 1998, a guy named Hugo Chavez gets elected. And he rode this huge wave of public anger right into office. His promise was simple, and it was powerful. Take the country's oil money away from the rich elites and use it to help the poor with big social programs.
And he got his chance, because in the 2000s, oil prices went through the roof again. So the government went all in. They launched these huge social programs called misiones for things like food and healthcare. But at the same time, they also put in strict controls on prices and the currency, and they took over hundreds of private businesses. The state's grip on the economy got even tighter.
And that brings us to the last and most catastrophic part of our story. What do you think happens when the one thing paying for everything suddenly vanishes into thin air? Well, you get a perfect storm.
I mean, just look at these numbers. Between 2012 and 2014, that's just 2 years, the price of oil, which was the lifeblood of the entire country, crashed by more than 70%. Just
Gone. The government's main paycheck just disappeared.
But here's the thing. It wasn't just the oil price. It was the definition of a perfect storm. You had the price crash hitting at the exact same time as massive government debt. And all of this was layered on top of the long-term damage from policies that had basically killed off every other industry. The whole system just broke.
And the result? A financial meltdown that's almost impossible to wrap your head around. By 2019, the hyperinflation rate in Venezuela hit an estimated, wait for it, 10 million%. No, that is not a typo.
A number that big is just abstract, right? It's hard to feel what that means. But this quote from someone living there really puts it into perspective. A lifetime of savings could no longer buy a loaf of bread. Just let that sink in. That's the real human cost of this.
So, wow, after walking through that whole story, which is pretty painful, what are the big takeaways? What are the lessons here?
Well, 4 things really jump out. First, the incredible danger of putting all your economic eggs in one basket. Second, how decisions you make when times are good can come back to bite you hard, decades down the road. Third, it shows you just how quickly a nation's wealth can evaporate. And finally, and this is the most important one, the devastating real-world human cost when an economy completely fails its people.
And all of this leaves us with a really important question, not just for Venezuela, but for the whole world. Their story is a huge warning sign, right? So as we all start shifting our energy sources, how can all the other countries out there that still depend on natural resources, how can they learn from this to make sure they don't go down the same path?